We have the terrorism, we have the separatism, right now we are talking about, and we have the migration. So is this a perfect storm for defense and security? And what is the line right now between defense and intelligence and security? Should we discuss separately about this, or is a concept that we have to face it and to prepare to be, let's say, developed to facing all the threats that are coming for Europe, for the United States, for the civilized world? So I would like to invite Mihnea Motoc, former defense minister, deputy head of the European Political Strategy Center, which is the think tank that is preparing strategic ideas for the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. Mihnea Motoc, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I guess this is the best panel I can think of, steered by the best moderator I can think of, in order for me to use the opportunity to make a little pitch for European defense, for what we're doing in the Commission and the European Union, because there I guess we're coming with solid responses to this perfect storm that you mentioned. Things are happening as we speak. European defense is happening. In fact, we shouldn't be surprised, because European defense was already there from the very beginning. This was one of the first integration projects in the post-war period. Let us recall that in the early 60s, there was the idea of a European defense community that was originally followed with enthusiasm. But now European defense has become a full-fledged political priority of the European Commission and of the European Union, and my contention would be that it is more than that. It is a spearhead of the continuation of the European integration project, maybe along with the completion of the economic and monetary union. These are the topics and the political projects for the time to come. And we've accomplished a lot. Some say that over the last months we have done more than what was possible in over 6 decades of European integration. Back in June, the Commission came with a very ambitious and comprehensive defense package, which has a vision proposal, the 3 scenarios that are pointing out to European Defense Union by, let's say, 2025, but also a very practical component, which is the European Defense Fund, quite an impressive one, which is meant to provide incentives for states to cooperate on defense, on defense research, on capability development, and eventually on procurement, in order to deliver more output. And this incentivized defense cooperation would eventually, over time, lead to defense integration. We've had also in June the leaders of the European Union, the summit, the summer summit, endorsing all of these recommendations by the Commission. More than that, asking that they are acted upon quite rapidly, deciding to launch PESCO, which was a dormant provision in the Lisbon Treaty for like a decade, asking for it to be launched in 6 months, which is, I guess, a positive pressure, but doesn't make things easy. We have a military planning and conduct capability that was set up in record time. True, it's not really an operational headquarter for European Union, but it is a very good beginning, and the speed with which it was set up was impressive. And we also have these EU battle groups that we keep talking about for a long time, and that seem to be forever on standby, and that are now more likely to be deployed, since there is agreement to finance their deployment out of the Athena mechanism. What led to this, apart from the total storm, this unprecedented mix of conventional and unconventional risks that are surrounding Europe? I wouldn't say it was chiefly because of the advent of a new administration in Washington. President Juncker had this political intuition far ahead even the start of the presidential campaign, but it is true that we heard the call of a fourth American president, which is calling for Europe to take more responsibility for its own security in its hands. It is not necessarily about Brexit, although I couldn't talk about these issues unless it happened, but it is mostly about European defense being perhaps the most popularly supported project in today's Europe. We have like more than 75% of EU citizens asking for more Europe in defense and security, worried as they are with terrorist attacks, with cyber attacks, which are listed in all opinion polls as top three concerns for the European citizens. And I would add to that the fact that if you look at the statistics on military evolutions, on economic evolutions in the world, European defense is inevitable. While the cuts on military budgets have finally stopped all over Europe, if we see the projection of defense spending, if we look at the projection on defense spending in Europe, for the years to come, it is slightly above a horizontal line, which means that we will become third instead of second-ranked military power in the world, not in a distant future, but in 2025. We would slip to the third position. In terms of economy, in 2030, Europe's share in global economy would be half of what it was in 2020. So what can we do with pretty much the same resources? I don't think there will be a formidable expansion of defense spending in Europe. If we stay confined in these national settings where we do 90% of research and technology for military capabilities, where we do 80% of military procurement, if we stay in the same frames with the same money, we will not be able to redress those worrying trends. So that is where the Commission is coming with a game changer, basically, a novel logic, and tries to incentivize that segment of developing military products, which is the riskiest, between pilot and having a prototype. That's where the money is put in order to create this reflex of states cooperating more on defense. You mentioned defense and then security, and that's a very good reminder, since I think that with the advent of European defense, we are able on the EU plane to do something that is not possible in national context. Where in national context you are pursuing defense and security largely in a separate manner, whilst at the EU we could go for a more joined up approach between defense and security, because from up there at least it is very clear that there is no boundaries anymore between external defense and internal security. It is actually a continuum. How we deliver that remains to be seen. But as we are as we are expecting agreement over the broad foundations for the European Defense Union by the Sibiu Special Summit in March 2019, we are already contemplating building that union as a defense and security union, with a possible materialization of this by 2025. I'd probably add a word on the fact that one of the empowering myths that was there, namely that you cannot build European defense by not undermining or competing. NATO is largely over. There are very few in Brussels that are still buying this. On the contrary, we need the European defense, and NATO wants it and says so. The name of the game is mostly about mutually reinforcing relations between the two organizations. It's about complementarity and definitely not about any competition. There are still a lot of in the pursuits with representatives of various political forces in Europe, I still stumble over some ideological obstacles, ideological cliches, like, for instance, the EU should not go into militarization. The EU budget should not be spent on defense. But, in fact, the good news is that we are already spending money out of the EU budget to finance defense research. The first contracts will be signed by the end of the year, and it is already happening. So, just to conclude these first reactions, I'd say that defense is obviously and will remain core to national sovereignty. But European defense is needed and will be there in order to help preserve that national sovereignty and make it even stronger in the perfect storm that is characteristic for the world we're living in. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador Motoc. I want to ask General Nicolae Ciucă, the Chief of General Staff, a very well appreciated general in the Atlantic community. And I saw that in Afghanistan, I saw that in Iraq, and I saw that since General Ciucă is the military leader of the Romanian army. What is the line between the military and the security? What is the line between the defense and the intelligence? What is your opinion about this perfect storm idea that I launched? Because we are facing so many threats, and I want to remind you all, I made an account. There are more than 600 people dead in Europe since March 2004, dead of terrorist attacks. 600 people. Are we living in this perfect storm with the idea that only the military could bring us hope? General Ciucă?
Good morning, and thank you very much for a very kind introduction. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to express my gratitude having the opportunity to attend for the second time an Aspen Institute forum, and also to be part of such an important panel with such great personalities, and also having the opportunity to be again with our former minister, Mr. Motoc. From the very beginning, I will say there is no boundaries. I was having prepared some notes, and after hearing the predecessor speakers, the Minister of Defense, His Excellency Mr. Ambassador, and the Undersecretary, the Assistant of the SecGen, I was thinking that how much commonality it's in between military policy, economical issues. I heard also the term prosperity. So I think all these elements of power are complementary to each other. So there is no boundary in between military and security. There is no boundary in between security and defense. The dynamic and the complexity of the threats and challenges today are showing us that and as you mentioned, the terrorist attacks, they don't care about boundaries. They are just looking for the weaknesses, and where they will find the weakness, they will use it. So in this respect, and not only today, every time when I have this opportunity, I will share my thoughts in regard of continuing to work together, all the agencies which are responsible with defense and security issues, all the other elements of power, to find those instruments which will enable us to create the capabilities able to cope with these new threats, these very complex, uncertain threats, and that's not easy. I think nobody from this panel and from this hall as well is not going to deliver a solution for what we have to do. We have to work together, all the military, the politicians, the academia, the think tankers, and together to try to create those capabilities. So maintaining security, here we have to think about nothing else than creating or putting in practice what have been already decided. Maintaining security, it's about maintaining our commitment to support all the decisions and measures taken in the last two NATO summits. Maintaining security means to maintain our commitment to contribute to the force packages in the operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, Balkans, in all these unstable places around the world. Advancing defense, it's not, that's not means to continue to move to deploy more troops somewhere closer to the front line. I think, from my opinion, advancing defense means to be more proactive, to to find this way and to create that platform to integrate all the capabilities from all the other agencies, and to not look to the issues, to one problem, only from the military point of view, because the military is not having the 100% solution for what we are facing today. So again, there is no boundary. This is one of the problems, and we have to see how we will create all these capabilities for being able to cope with all the future challenges and threats.
Thank you so much, General Ciucă. Very interesting ideas. Maybe we will come back to ask you and to discuss if there is a preoccupation and if there is a military response to hybrid threats like cyber attacks or terrorism, if we are prepared to put defense forces to fight with these threats, of course, together with intelligence agencies.
There is very clear, in the last period of time, we were very much discussing about enhancing the military intel capabilities, enhancing the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities, which means that we will have an awareness capability who can provide us the information prior to bad things are to occur. We are speaking about hybrid, which means a combination in between military and conventional, unconventional, and asymmetric instruments, which are going to be used in order to exploit each opportunities in order to destabilize and disunify the alliance cohesion. And cyber, it's also, cyber is different than asymmetric and hybrid. Cyber domain have been already approved and recognized at the last summit in Warsaw as a space, a battle space for within NATO. So in this respect, we have to find all those solutions to allocate money in order to create the capabilities to be able to cope with the cyber attack and to create the cyber defense capability. And the National Security Defense Council has already approved 2 new capabilities. One of them is the Cyber Defense Command Headquarters, and that's going to be operational next year. And also the transformation of the special forces. So the special forces will have a new design, design which is very much adequate to the new threats, new challenges, but also it's based on the experience we gain by using the special forces in Afghanistan and Iraq. So there is a lot of work to do in this domain, and also there is a need of coordination with all the other agencies which have responsibilities in this domain. So military is going to be a complementary instrument for all the other agencies which are having the role of leading these domains.
Thank you, General, for so many interesting ideas. I want to ask Deputy Foreign Minister George Ciamba, what is the diplomatic dimension of maintaining security? What diplomats could do to increase this effort of maintaining security? Please.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much to the GMF and the Aspen Institute for organizing such a topical event. I think in a way it's not a new theme. It could be a new theme for others, but I think for all of us this is something that we're discussing all over the years, and I think this is the first answer. You know, we had a prophecy that we didn't want to come true, and it became true, which is about the region. I think our region have seen a major disruption in the conditions for cooperation in our area in the recent years. I think the balance of interests and influence between the major actors has been upturned. I think as a result, our region, in a way, needed a reprompted effort of NATO to address our security concerns. What we have done so far, we have seen, I think first and foremost, we have to say that first it comes the diplomatic efforts, and we see, I think my predecessor was speaking about results of the Warsaw Summit. I think we see it as well ourselves when it comes to Romania, the level of military exercises we had on our territory this year, which is it's impressive. I think it's the best we had in our history, so to say. I think we've seen as well the efforts we are doing for reassurance, as well on a national level, but as well at the NATO level, and as a result, this has not been possible without diplomatic efforts being in place. In the same time, of course, we have to we kept saying that the Black Sea is it's of strategic importance for the allies. As I mentioned, it came true. We can see that in this part of the world, the borders moved. I think we have to address a multiplication of threats, which is both classical and newer. I should not speak only about terrorist attacks. I think we had everything. We had classical warfare, we have moving of the borders, we have hybrid, we had cyber attacks, we have everything we can think about. We should not consider them being so new to us. I should say this is a new label, but we had been confronted with this kind of phenomena in any previous conflicts, at the end of the day, nobody can reinvent the wheel and nobody's going to reinvent the war. So the war, at the end of the day, had dimensions which are related with what we call now fake news. Before it had as well dimensions that are related in a way with campaigns of disinformation. The concept of resilience has been all the time quite important. It was one of the cornerstones of the NATO alliance in the time of the Cold War, and I think we can see the resilience. When we go to resilience, we are actually revisiting some of the concepts we had in the time of the Cold War, unfortunately. In the same time, Romania's vision, in a way, has been reconfirmed because, Romania was first a robust NATO, reconfirmed as the cornerstone of Euro-Atlantic security. We have been so happy to see that President Trump reaffirmed the Article 5 when he was with President Iohannis back in Washington. I think this is very important for Romania. In the same time, we think that the alliance presence has to be predictable, has to have a long-term vision, has to be interconnected and integrated with the other allied efforts. We have to move beyond ad hoc approaches on the activities in the Black Sea. We have to have the balance of the east-south with the east-north, with the north of the east, between the north of the east and the south of the east flag. We think that military deterrence to the east of the alliance confirms that NATO as a political and military alliance is still very much in business and is willing and able to provide for the security and defense of all its member states. We continue to say that it's important that the alliance, in the means and ways it can, in a way, would keep on lending active support to our partners in the region, the partners of the democratic values and the partners of the democratic community. We have to recognize that in the same time with the NATO alliance, we have a growing awareness in Europe. And I'm happy that Ambassador Motoc was mentioning the fact that now Europe wants to come with something and to put in front of us. This is something that for us that we have, we had all the time a strong support for both NATO and the EU is very important to see. And I think that we are ready and to be very engaged with the EU. I think we are ready to exchange with the EU and to give to the EU our input about the region. At the same time, we're expecting the European Union to be more active in terms of a strategic vision for the region. I don't think that it has to make it for a strategic vision of the United States or a strategic vision of NATO. It has to be a strategic vision of all of us. And I think it has its role to play. I think Europe has to make a strategic priority strengthening the capacity of the partners. This is why I speak about resilience, because I think it's very important to make them more able to respond to multiplication and complication of hybrid threats. I think that the permanent structured cooperation could offer the basis for promoting concrete projects. It is very important that by doing so, the industries of Romania, the way the economy of Romania operates is not going to be left outside. It's very important that the countries that are less sophisticated in the defense industry to have the same rights and to have at the same time the same level of engagement as the others that have quite a history and a tradition in the defense industry. Romania, we would be starting this year to the benchmark of 2%. This is, I think, is the most important contribution Romania is making, is spending 2% of defense. This is the most important contribution for NATO, for our strategic relationship with the United States, and for Europe. In the same time, we are ready and we are working, and I think we have seen that it fall upon our wishes to bring together a very dynamic transatlantic relationship. For Romania, the transatlantic relationship of the Union, it's important, and I think we are looking for both ways, from both sides. I think we want to strengthen both ends of the transatlantic relationship, and I think that by doing so, by Europe doing more in defense, this is a real contribution as well for the transatlantic relationship with the United States of America. I think that as we are located in the region of overlapping security challenges, only a solid North Atlantic alliance and a close transatlantic cooperation in the area of security are the fundamental foreign policy priorities for us. We think that it's important to ensure complementarity between NATO and the European Union. We should do better, we should not do the same things. And I think we should try to see the division of labor, and this is one of the main issues that would spare resources, would make us more smarter, and would be more able to address any kind of challenges that are coming from the East. And I would like to conclude just saying that there is a full between the stability, and I think in a way all this discussion that we, under the title of which we have the panel, which is about the periphery and the center, doesn't make so much sense. I think in a way there is no periphery. In a way now, if I look in terms of military terms, I should say there is the flank and there is the rest of the alliance, you know. And I should say that Romania, at this moment of time, very clearly, if you look on the map and you look on the geography surrounding it, it's on the flank of NATO, it's on the flank of the democracy, of values of democracy, and this is on the flank of, so to say, doing more for defense and trying to give an example in a way not only for the countries of the region, but I think as well for the other member states in terms of how you should see the relationship between security, stability, and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Ciamba. Every time we discuss about NATO and Romania, everybody, absolutely everybody, is telling the same proposition. Romania has given 2% of the GDP for defense. And I heard this phrase, this proposition, maybe 10 times this year, 2 times from US President Donald Trump, 3 times from NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, who will be here on Monday. So Romania is a good example. Romania could bring expertise and could be, let's say, a leading nation in terms of facing threats and being dedicated to all the commitments that you said, General, and that also mentioned by Ambassador Ciamba. And we are talking about facing threats, about increasing the defense budget. We are talking about maintaining security. But at the end of the day, we are all going to the parliament. Nothing can be done without the approval of the parliament. And with this said, I'll give the floor to Gabriel Vlase, Vice President of the Romanian Parliament, Chamber of Deputies. Please, Your Honor.
Yeah, thank you also for invitation. I think I will answer to your question very simple. The Parliament will approve everything, talking about 2%, talking about buying weapons, talking about our relations with the North Atlantic treatment. But I will try to come back a little bit to our topic, namely European security, because this is a title in the list of priorities for the Commission issues. So, and you told and you asked before in the start of the beginning of the talk in the discussions about the integration of the actions, intelligence, military, political, economical. And I don't think, in my opinion, we have this comprehensive conceptualization about this European security here. You know, after 24 years, I think, after Maastricht, we were the first time a special security union in Commission parts. This is the first time. We needed 24 years to find out that we need a security union. Also, I was also look closer to the EU security agenda, and the Juncker Commission, namely combating cross-border crimes and terrorism, is common European responsibility. Okay, I agree. I totally agree with the common responsibility, but I have a rhetorical question. who offered this, because I don't think it is a European institution responsible for the bloody attacks in Barcelona and Paris and Madrid and everywhere. There's no one responsible for this. We have here a fracture, I think. I mean, the EU is one, the member states is one, and who is paying the debt? Because I was talking with a policeman in Romania. I was talking with a policeman in Spain also, and I think in Brussels, I don't remember exactly. And when they go to fight against terrorism effectively there in the airport, they are not thinking at a common policy, European common policy of defense. He's only thinking to protect his citizen there. So here it's a big fracture between common policy. We started after 24 years, as I said before. We had a very remarkable ambassador, Julian King, responsible of this. But, you know, the army is to defend the country from outside. Our political agenda in Commission is said all the time was the threats from outside of the EU. But I don't think now EU is much interested in what happens in Djibouti, for example. Yes, there's a problem there. Is a problem there. But we have bigger problem here. So I try to come back a little bit to this topic because, yes,
it's from inside.
Yes, it's from inside. We don't have threats from outside now in Europe. Of course, we have cyber attack. We have Russians who is involving a lot now in the European policies. But the attacks and all the problems are now created in Europe are from the European citizens. They are European citizens, also in Barcelona, also everywhere when it happened. Also, we have a little problem, a small problem, sorry. You know, now everyone, we got this common security managed under the common foreign and security policy. That means almost the Minister of Foreign Policy. But I have also here a rhetorical question. What can be done here in Romania from the Minister of Foreign Service about the terrorism, about if something happened? Talking about this.
So you think other agencies should be involved in facing those threats?
Everyone is working inside the country. I don't think we don't have we don't have an FBI. We don't have a central intelligence agency.
Yeah, but in a way, just to have a quick response.
You see?
Yes.
Yes, I started the discussion.
A quick response, if you want to do, just to give an example, sharing of data. Somebody is coming, you have to know from where he's coming. You have to, then in order to share the data, you need to have a legal convention and a legal bilateral agreement that has to be actually, in a way, the foundation of how you cooperate with the others. And this has to be done by the foreign ministry, that has to be negotiated by diplomats. It's not about to be implemented by diplomats, but they have to give the infrastructure. And, there are many things that we are trying to develop in Europe too, about data sharing, about, how you do, especially after these terrorist attacks. This resulted in a change of legislation. Should not forget about the passenger name list, registry, and all these instruments that were put in place, and these were negotiated and, in a way, created by the foreign ministries and by the political leadership, in a way, and then they are implemented, of course, at the technical level by the ones that have the need to know and know better. So there is a lot to do in bringing together, as well bringing the concept of resilience, putting it together back, where it should be, because for many years, I think for a country like Romania, we are thinking that we join NATO, we join the EU, everything is settled, there is no danger. No, there is danger. There is danger, and we could see it. And we could see it on the Black Sea, and we could see it in Crimea, and we could see it as well. Maybe it's not so much terrorism danger like it is in the core of Europe, but classical danger is plenty of it. Where is classical, where it starts to be non-conventional, this is a long discussion. I don't think this is the place to have it. And we see fake news in Romania. We see things operated by different other, so to say, foreign interests. So I think, but we need to put resilience back, and we need to raise the awareness. And I think this is what is very important. The political process is important, and this is a political process. In a way, I think there is more interest about foreign policy today than it was 3 years ago before the invasion in Crimea, just to give you an example. Because, the people from the street started to see some images on the TV. So it became clear, it was very difficult to explain what diplomats are doing. Now I think it's a lot more easier, We could say what we are doing is trying to avoid in the future to have something like that in our home country. And this is all about. Thank you.
There's a new level of discussion, inside threats and outside threats in the allied space. So if you give your conclusion on this, and then we'll take some questions. Inside threats, outside threats, the way we are facing, what agencies should be involved, and how late the response came also from European Union and from NATO, with only a few months ago appointed Assistant Secretary General for Intelligence, and only a few months ago Europol having the attribute to be involved in fighting terrorism in Europe. But we are facing terrorism in Europe, as I mentioned to you, since 2004, since Madrid, and in the last 13 years, more than 600 Europeans are dead of terrorism.
So I think the outside threats are almost solved the problem now, because we have NATO, and NATO it's working very well, and it's very well organized. I mean, in the level of the cooperation between military intelligence, foreign intelligence services, political. Inside threats, it is what I told before. We don't have a common policy about it. We don't know who is responsible for this. We have to do first time something very quickly. If something happened in Europe, in a city from Europe, in Paris, for example, it's only the police from there.
Yes, but the last solution that we see, armed forces on the streets of Paris and London. So
army is not from inside.
But they are uses. They are used.
It is the reality.
Yes, it's the reality. You see more and more pictures with the armed forces and on Tour Eiffel and on London Bridge and so on. So finally, when we are talking about threats, inside or outside threats, the final solution is the army, General.
Yeah, but
I don't agree.
Of course, it's a thing to debate.
It's the army because the army is not the army, the armed forces. But again, everybody is looking to the armed forces because of credibility of the armed forces, and also because of the capabilities of the armed forces, and because of that very important attributes, flexibility and adaptability. We have the inside power to adapt to this kind of requirements.
It's a reality that we see armed forces in Paris and London and Berlin.
What I would like to say again, that is not the solution. We have to create that platform which has the instruments to leverage all the capabilities from all the other agencies, and to speak the same language, to create the interoperability, to create a long-term policy in order to be able to deal with all these issues. And that's, again, it's not easy. We need consensus. Sometimes it's very hard to create that a platform to integrate all these capabilities in a country. But what about in between 29 or 28 countries? It's not easy again.
Right.
You know, I told before, first time. So the inside threats are coming from the European citizens. You cannot put the army to fight against his own citizens.
We see this reaction,
yes.
So that's why you need
that's
to debate and
police,
discuss.
That's why it's intelligence service, interior intelligence service, to do it, to keep the law. We cannot say, I heard the statement these days about after Barcelona. We should have a dialogue, more dialogue. But it's very clear. They have the constitution, they have the rules, they have the laws. against the fracture, you have to put the law in the street.
I want to ask also, Ambassador Motoc, should we have an European agency on fighting terrorism?
There is already a start for that. You have a unit within Europol that could be taken not to the level of a separate agency, but significantly given greater resources. Can I also chip in this discussion on how to illustrate better, perhaps, how defense and security lines are blurring inside Europe and in our external action outside the European Union. Defense is very much in a new context about conducting operations. This is crisis management essentially, but given the areas where that is taken, you might be facing terrorist factors. When you do that, you would need to be equipped with the adequate intelligence about the overall environment in which you operate. And you might have in that environment, for instance, a European born and raised foreign fighter that you would have to get information from the security side, intelligence side within the European Union.
And about cooperation, I want to tell Vice President Vlase that maybe some of the information that the Spanish police have to fighting terrorism coming from Romania.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes, and
So
it's possible.
we can think about
But you know,
the same platform of cooperation.
There is
and EU and NATO.
bilateral understanding
We
between
need a
countries,
common
between the
platform
intelligence service.
to
It's not a
coordinate.
common platform.
Yes.
Then you have indeed in certain EU member states the national army being entrusted with missions, with a clearly defined mission on the national territory. It's a case of France where you have like 11,000 troops that are deployed for that purpose. This is a reality. It's not only in France. It wouldn't be constitutionally possible in Romania, but this is a very good motive for reflection at the EU level as we are building this defense and security union. You mentioned cybersecurity, which is normally internal and for intelligence community to deal with primarily, but to have cybersecurity, you have to have cyber defense, because otherwise it's not effective. You have to have cyber deterrence, and therefore we see a lot of member states developing quite interesting and meaningful programs for offensive capabilities, cyber offensive capabilities, just to have a meaningful and credible deterrent to complement cybersecurity. And one last example is to see how Justice and Home Affairs policy is mixing up with the CSDP, with Common Security and Defense Policy, in order to try to curb down illegal migration over the Mediterranean. So you can ask yourself, what is from the point of view of defense, relationship between defense and security, what is the Mediterranean? Is it a space for internal security from our point of view, or is it external action? I think this is an open question. What can we do is to try to find what makes sense to complement national efforts at the EU level. What is really bringing added value at the EU level? It's also an open question. It's intuitively true that more intelligence sharing on the EU level would help various national intelligence communities to deal with essentially cross-border threats. Terrorism is always cross-border, cyber attack by definition. But how much you go in that direction is still a sensitive question. How much trust you need to have in order to put together these intelligence is also quite a challenge. So I guess we will start small and gain trust and see exactly what is the EU level able to add up to national efforts and take it from there.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this very interesting debate, it's time for Q&A. I saw a Turkish friend already raising his hand. Please identify yourself and mention also the organization.
Muzaffer Şenel, Istanbul Şehir University, Aspen Fellow. Thanks for the extraordinary speeches to hear. It's really informative and also thought-provoking. My question is relating with the developments which is going since the last 2 or 3 years. While Turkey is deteriorating its relations with NATO and the Western allies, at the same time strengthening its military ties, especially to Russia and the other institutions like Shanghai, trying to kind of seek for a membership at least, but this looks impossible. That we discussed with our Chinese friends this issue as well. How do you see that these Turkish efforts to strengthening its ties with Russia and its implications to the wider Black Sea region? The first one is which is also relating with do you think that the EU has the security and defense culture and tradition in terms of as a commonly that to creating a telephone number did not solve the common foreign policy issue? Do you think that especially for the defense is that it will be possible, at least at discursive level?
Thank you. I will ask the former ambassador to Ankara to ask this ambassador Ciamba.
Not the easy one, you know. I think, you know, one of the responses is very clear. You know, this was the reason we need a strong NATO, because we need a NATO that works with all the allies, and I think Turkey is a pivotal ally in the Black Sea, and it's very important for us that Turkey as an allied and member of NATO, and in the same time a strategic partner of Romania, is going to look eye to eye to the issues on the Black Sea when it comes to security. Either way, you know, the fact that we have such an excellent bilateral cooperation with Turkey on defense and security issues should be helping as well when it comes to addressing on multilateral issues like NATO, you know, some of the things that we have to do, and we have to do not because we want to do, we want to do just for the sake of being on the offensive. We have to do them in terms of adjusting to the new reality, because there is a new reality on the Black Sea. And I think Turkey should adjust to the new reality as it is for Romania, and NATO should adjust to the new reality on the Black Sea. When it comes to what the Union can do and what can complement, I don't think it's the idea that the Union, you know, is great, because the Union all the time has been mostly about soft power, and I think this is one of the things that makes it so important that it could develop because of the NATO alliance, because of the stability and predictability that was brought by the alliance. So now it's about putting more efforts in terms of foreign policy, trying to do things, but without having for the time being real military assets. So I don't think that we should expect the Union to do something on the Black Sea. I think the Union is more equipped to prepare itself for having a defense industry, for having more cooperation. Exactly what General Ciucă was saying here, you know, we need more interoperability, more coordination, more, so to say, putting together of national assets, because at the end of the day, I think it's about national assets. So I think actually, I think that the main organization to deal with the Black Sea security is NATO, and I think the fact that Romania and Bulgaria and Turkey are all members of NATO should help, should not be the other way around.
Anybody else? Please. The European parliamentary, Ramona Monescu, please. And after that, Florin.
Thank you so much. My name is Ramona Monescu. I'm a member of the European Parliament, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Subcommittee of Defense and Security. So I have 2 questions for the distinguished panelists.
Which
one?
I
salute all of them.
Okay.
So considering that in the south, after the defeat of Daesh on the ground, we are talking already about a cyber caliphate. And this is it's coming to add, as an add to a present threat in the eastern part of Europe, coming from Russia mainly. Do you think that European Union should scale up its cyber defense, own capabilities, knowing that European Union is working on that, but more on soft power, more on capacity building, and less on operability level, which are left behind after the last report that we have received from the Council in the European Parliament? This is the reality. So we will scale up our cyber capabilities. I don't know, Mr. Motoc, maybe he will give us some news about it. And in this context, do you think that Romania can really contribute and can be an important player in European Union, knowing that we do have human resources, we can develop capabilities, having already a good school on the IT and cyber issues? And the second question, do you think that European Union, together with its allies, especially United States, can put a pressure at the international level on criminalizing cyber threat? Because this is something which we very seriously talking about in the European Parliament. Unless we criminalize the threat, we will not have all the means to fight against. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will ask Ambassador Motoc to start.
Well, thank you very much for this question, which is also offering some of the answers to it. I'd say that yes, the shrinking of the territorial base of ISIS is going to produce a lot of consequences. The first one of which is taking the fight more towards Europe, towards the US, by way of resorting to classical terrorism. My own contention is that we are a step beyond classical terrorism, in the sense that we're seeing all these lone attacks that are perpetrated with the simplest means possible, that are very cheap and that are easily assumed afterwards by the organization outside Europe. It's a new form of terrorism that is more available and very difficult to counter. There is, for instance, right now a démarche to put controls on everything that was used by terrorists in over recent strikes. But how can you, for instance, control the renting of vans or things like that? It can be done. Something can be done about that, but not everything. The second is going digital, but that is not really new. I mean, most of the radicalization is done in the digital sphere, and we are having a distinct strand of work to deal with that. The latest proposal is by the Commission is making significant advance in the removal of radical and more generally illegal content from the internet. Based on previous experience, on the dialogue with the major operators private operators in this domain. I'm glad you mentioned soft power because this is what we can do best in order to counter and prevent terrorism. And Ambassador Ciamba also made that point about soft power. I think in the future we will not be able as Europe to project this kind of attractiveness, our famed soft power, unless it's going to be backed by hard power, credible capabilities of our own. And this is one of the reasons for more Europe on defense. And this is also one of the goals that we are pursuing in developing European Defense Union. Last point you made in a very comprehensive intervention was about criminalizing cyber threats. I would have two reactions to that. It's first, we need to get more sophisticated in defining cyber attacks. What is how grave a cyber attack should be in order to consider it an armed attack and trigger trigger the respective political and military reaction to that. About criminalization, there is in a communication that will reach Parliament from Commission and EAS, which is very, very up to date and very comprehensive. There is a whole section dedicated to law enforcement vis-à-vis cyber attacks, and also to the prosecution of such acts, which can be held at the EU level.
General Ciucă? Cyber threats and the new headquarters you are developing.
What I can add to Minister Motoc, I've already mentioned, is the fact that so far there is only a national development. So there is not a common capability to counter the cyber threat. So I think once we'll have this capability done and all the other European nations and NATO nations having the same level of cyber capability developed, I think we can speak about creating a NATO and EU common cyber defense capability. So far, we are not on that way.
Ambassador Ciamba.
Just a small remark, I think we're, as I think was mentioned, we are just at the start of a process. At the end of the day, it's about national capabilities, because actually these are national threats, and I think this is a sort of revival of the state, because actually it has to respond to a national threat. In the same time, I think it's the same issue. This is the way we can manage it. We could, so to say, move forward. This is the same as it is in all the other issues which are related to the Union, which is connectivity. So it's about connecting the dots. At the end of the day, it's about creating the island capabilities and then putting them together. So I think it's about interconnectivity, and I think when it comes to dealing with extreme phenomena like terrorism or so and everything, it's very important that we have a common, and as I mentioned, we start working on a legal framework that in a way is going to, so to say, give an impulse to our intelligence service, armed forces, to share more freely information and data, not only on a bilateral level, but mostly at the multilateral level, because you don't know from where the threat is going to come, you don't know where it's going to hit. And I think this is the basic idea of what we are doing in Europe. What we are good in Europe is creating a legal framework, and trying to make it work and implement it, trying to give the national objections in order to have a comprehensive package that gives the possibility to have the technical implementation for the ones that need to know and the ones that need to act. Thank you.
If I may, just for being more clear, creating a cyber defense capability within the military doesn't mean that we are going to defend all the other national and individual institutions. So we will not be able, and we will not be in charge to defend all the other, let me say, the national cyber network.
If I may add something, the dilemma is that, the others and fundamental Islam and criminalization, everything is using the fact that we are globalized and we are still very national. We should become more globalized and interconnecting in order to be able to fight. This is where the solution is.
Okay, the last and very short question, Florinița.
Hi, good morning. Hi, everyone. I'm Florinita. I'm currently in Brussels, VS, and you happened to mention Commissioner Julian King, and again, it's happened that I'm working for him in the Security Union Task Force, and actually that's something very experimental. It's for the first time that this portfolio has been created, and it's the first time that actually the Commission and ES, together with member states, are trying to have a common approach, in particular on counterterrorism and on cyber. That being said, I I think it's a lot, we have to be clear about the fact that the first line of defense, both on security and defense, are member states, both in EU and in NATO. That being said, NATO and EU are here to help and to complement what the member states are doing. And that being said, in particular, if we take on the EU level, in particular on counterterrorism, I think it's a lot what's happening in terms of prevention. If you take everything that has been done so far in terms of directives or action plan in terms of taking the finance from terrorism, also on preventing terrorist financing. I'm referring here to anti-money laundering, but not only. I'm referring to the currently work which is being done in setting up a tracking system for making sure that actually we understand the transactions made in a formal system of banking system, and actually to make sure that we prevent all this money flowing into planning and execution of terrorist attacks. But then we have on prevention of radicalization, we have all the work which is being done now on preventing or taking down terrorist content online. Not to mention what we're doing in terms of making sure to prevent people having access to weapons and to having access to material leading to explosive. I mean, I don't want to go into the details, but what I'm saying is that actually it's a lot happening. It's a lot being done at EU level. Of course, everything is done together with the member states. But that being said, we are not there in a very passive approach. That being said, just was a comment. We had yesterday a night session on looking a bit at how strong, how resilient is the transatlantic relationship. And one of the comments we made is making reference to a statement made by Chancellor Merkel in May this year, basically saying the time when actually we could completely rely on each other are almost gone. That being said, and given the fact that we are later on going to have a session on where it's going to break first, we had a discussion yesterday whether we're seeing now only cracks which are just superficial, or are these cracks in the transatlantic relationship, in particular on NATO, running so deep that actually this moves the whole political momentum on the side of the EU to take more and more responsibility, and actually, as Chancellor Merkel put it, to take our European fate in our own hands. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Florin. You can always count on these panelists. They were brilliant from my point of view. It was a lovely debate. Thank you so much. We'll have the coffee break. Everybody's waiting. And I want to thank you all for listening to this interesting panel. Thank you.